So firstly, I want to show you just around how these data governance controls look and feel within the Copilot experience. So let's say a user goes into Copilot within the Word application, and they type a prompt and say, "Can you give me a short FAQ of Project Obsidian?" Copilot says, "Sure thing. You have access to this data. However, if you notice on the top of this yellow tooltip has applied, and this document is now listed as confidential. The reason for that is the source data the Copilot is referring to that the user has access to is confidential information. Therefore, this prompt or the response to the prompt also inherits that same sensitivity. So let's say this user then takes this information, pop it into ChatGPT, the tool they use in their personal life, right? And they say, okay, I need to summarize this sensitive document to my boss so that they understand it in slightly more layman's terms. They pop it into ChatGPT, and what happens here is Purview DLP kicks in and says, you cannot share this information in ChatGPT because it's highly sensitive. And what that's essentially using is a sensitivity label to apply a data loss prevention policy, which can prevent your users putting sensitive information into third-party generative AIs. This also applies to non-generative AI technologies like Gmail, like Dropbox, etc. But this is just being used in this particular application. Let's say another user goes in and they heard at the water cooler in the office someone talking about Project Obsidian, which is a top secret project, but they wanted to learn a little bit more about it. They go into Copilot and say, "Hey, can you give me a little bit of an overview about Project Obsidian?" But because this user does not have access to this, Copilot does not produce a response and says, "No idea what you're talking about. There's no such thing as Project Obsidian." Similarly, a different user who does have access to Project Obsidian goes into Copilot and says, "Hey, can you give me an overview of Project Obsidian again?" Copilot says, "Sure thing." But the key thing to note is Copilot inherits or Teams, even within the Teams interface, it inherits the sensitivity label of the original document so that this output similarly will, if try to copy and paste or exfiltrate it in a different form, will also be protected by the native document protections. Let's say a user thinks they can maybe outsmart your security controls, or maybe a user just doesn't know, what they should and shouldn't be doing with particular information. So let's say a user is on their phone, they open up Copilot and they say, "Hey, can you give me a quick short FAQ on Project Obsidian again?" You'll see a recurring theme about Project Obsidian. And then that user says, "Okay, I want to, put that in my personal notes file, or I want to put that in my personal Word document, or I want to put that into a WhatsApp and exfiltrate that data." Using app protection policies in Intune, this action is blocked. Ultimately, because the first application is a work application and the user then tries to copy the information to a non IT managed application, that action is blocked using app protection policies within Intune. And what that does is it just increases or reduces the kind of the risk surface area when using generative AI in your organization and ensuring that users are kind of well governed and secured when working on their personal and corporate devices.